Let's talk about leadership. What if I told you that one of the most powerful guides on the subject wasn't written by some modern CEO, but by a 6th century monk, a guy who desperately did not want the job? Well, his ancient book has some shockingly relevant things to say about power, and today we're going to dive right in.
This right here is the big question, the paradox that's at the heart of our story. The idea that the people who are most worthy of power are often the ones who are least interested in having it. And our entire explainer revolves around a man who is basically the living, breathing embodiment of this exact conflict.
So let's meet Gregory, who would later be known as Gregory the Great. Now, before he was a saint or a pope, he was one of the most powerful figures in Rome. And then, right at the absolute peak of his career, he did something that was, well, pretty much unthinkable.
I mean, just look at this career path. It's wild. In 573, Gregory is the prefect of Rome. Think of him as the mayor of the most important city in the Western world. Then, just a couple of years later, he walks away from it all, gives up the power, the money, everything, to become a monk. But then, in 590, Rome is in crisis, and the people, they demand that he come back and lead.
And this is where the story gets really interesting. He didn't just say, "Oh, no, thank you." He actively fought his own election. He wrote letters to the emperor begging him to cancel the vote. He literally tried to hide, to run away from this huge responsibility. He was terrified of the job.
So that's the big question, right? It's what drove him, and it's what we're going to figure out today. What did this guy know about power that made him run for the hills? The answer, it turns out, is in a book he felt he had to write.
You see, once he was forced into the job, Gregory wrote this guide to leadership called the Pastoral Rule. But get this, it wasn't a manual for how to climb the corporate ladder. No, it was a manual about the crushing, soul-bending weight of being at the top.
This quote right here, this is the book's mission statement. He wrote it as a warning. He wanted anyone who was hungry for power to think twice, and for anyone who already had it to be scared of it. For Gregory, leadership wasn't some prize to be won. It was a massive, profound burden.
He actually called leadership the art of arts. Not a science, not a business, but an art. The single most difficult craft a person could ever take on. And why? Because you're not just managing spreadsheets or supply chains, you're responsible for guiding other human beings. And that takes a level of self-awareness that's almost impossible to hang on to.
Gregory saw leadership as a battle that you have to fight on two fronts at the exact same time. There's the obvious one, the external war against chaos and crises. But he warns that there was a much more dangerous battle happening inside.
And this chart really breaks down that constant tension. Every leader is being pulled between the outer battle, all the meetings, the emails, the fires you have to put out, and the inner battle. You know, the fight against your own pride, your own ego, the temptation to start thinking you're the smartest person in the room. Gregory argued that this inner battle was way more important and way easier to lose. And this is his great warning. He's saying that the constant hustle of external duties can make you an expert on everything in the world except yourself. You get so busy managing everything out there that you totally forget to check in with what's going on in here. You basically lose yourself while you're busy running the show.
Okay, so this brings us to his most radical idea. If power is so dangerous to the soul, then what's the point of it? For Gregory, the only ethical answer was to completely flip the definition of power on its head.
So on one side, you've got the typical way the world sees power. It's about ruling over people, about rank and privilege. But Gregory's model? It's the total opposite. It's about service. It's not about being important, it's about being useful to people. He believed everyone is equal, and a leader's job is simply to help others.
And boom, this is the line that just nails it. Your job as a leader isn't to control other people. It's to help them and yourself conquer your own worst impulses. The whole point of your power is to fight against things like greed and pride, not to dominate your fellow human beings.
But the book isn't just this high-level philosophy. What really makes it a masterpiece that still holds up today is that it's also an incredibly practical guide to human psychology.
You know how you can't talk to all of your friends in the exact same way? Well, Gregory was all over that idea 1,400 years ago. He knew that different personalities, different moods, they all required totally different approaches. A single blunt message just won't work for everybody.
So let's look at a couple of quick examples. If someone's a little too cheerful, a little too complacent, you don't pile on more praise. You gently remind them of the potential downsides of inaction. But for someone who's sad and discouraged, you do the exact opposite.
You remind them of the joys and hope that are still possible.
This works for personality types too. If someone is shameless, they're not picking up on subtle hints. Gregory says you need to be direct, maybe even a little sharp. But if you took that same approach with someone who's timid and shy, you'd crush them. They need gentle, patient encouragement to be built up.
One last one for temperament. To the impulsive person who just dives into everything, you warn them that their speed can sometimes mess up their good intentions. But to the person who overthinks everything and hesitates, you warn them the delay can mean missed opportunities. It's this brilliant system of psychological checks and balances.
So it's probably no surprise that a book this insightful had a massive, massive impact. For centuries, this wasn't just a book on leadership, it was pretty much the book. And its influence was just huge. It was the go-to manual for bishops for centuries. It was required reading in Charlemagne's entire empire. It got translated in other languages almost instantly. For over 1,000 years, these ideas about humility and service were at the heart of Western thought, and there's still an incredible study on the psychology of power even today.
And that's really the bottom line here. You don't have to be religious to get something out of this. When you strip it all away, the Pastoral Rule is a universal guide to the incredible burden and the deep responsibility of leading other people with integrity. Which brings us all the way back to that first question we asked. After walking through Gregory's world, his fear of power, his obsession with humility, his deep understanding of people, it really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? In our world today, what's the one quality we need most in our leaders? And, maybe more importantly, are the people who have it the ones who even want the job in the first place?